This is Empire Sports Alliance, Unfiltered. No fluff, no filters, just the real side of sports. We're talking athletes, coaches, agents, doctors, executives, the people behind the scenes who actually move the needle. From building careers to surviving the grind to winning off the field. This is where real conversations collide.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode here of Empire Sports Alliance Unfiltered. I'm Ronnie. I'm the wealth guy. Got my co-host, Eric.
Hey, everyone.
And today we got Chellee Siewert, founding partner of Capture Sports Marketing. So welcome to the show, Chellee.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Well, today we're going to be talking a little bit about, branding in terms of like building a brand and, what actually matters, right? We talk about this a lot, and I think we've talked about it on the show several times, Eric, where it's like, and we talk about NIL, but we also talk about professional athletes and not just what they do on the field, but also off the field and kind of what their brand is, et cetera. And I think, Chellee, you're an expert in that, in that particular segment. So would you mind kind of like sharing with us a little bit about your firm and how you got there and, what your journey looked like?
Absolutely. So Capture Sports and Entertainment was founded almost 15 years ago. And really the impetus for the first, I would say, 10 years was working with athletes, coaches, teams, entertainers on their philanthropic impact. So like you said earlier, off the field, who are they? Who are they as a person? What do they believe in? What are their values? What are they passionate about as far as giving back? 5 years ago, we added in some personal branding to that. So what is their full brand look like? What does their social media content look like? What does their websites look like, so that everything is a cohesive and people will understand and realize and recognize that that's for that specific athlete. So my background is that I came from an entrepreneurial family. My grandpa started 4 small businesses in his lifetime. I was very fortunate and blessed to have a grandma that also had her own company. So she passed away 2 years ago at the age of 98. And so she would often tell me, back when I was starting my business, a lot of times women didn't work, much less own their own business. And she was an interior decorator. I can remember so many times going with her to pray to homes and helping her carry things in and decorate and do that. I did not get her decorating gene. So I did not get that. But I did get, the realization that women can own, a business. And one thing that she always told me is, say yes and you could figure it out. And she shared a story with me that she was, interior decorator for home building, but someone came and asked her to decorate their private plane. And at that time, she hadn't even been on a commercial airline, much less a private plane. And she was like, Chellee, I said yes, and you figure it out. So I have this made up word that I use all the time. It's figured outness. Like, you have to have the figured outness.
See, I say fake it till you make it.
There you go. Courted and grandma, right out. Yes. So, I graduated with psychology and business degrees. I say I often use my psychology degree far more than my business degree a lot of times in life and in business. And started out in the nonprofit world and spent many, many years in the nonprofit, doing all different types of stuff. And I firmly believe that, one of the nonprofits I was at for 7-8 years, and that nonprofit ran like a business. And because we were a nonprofit and we were lean and mean, you learned how to do every aspect of the business. And so I firmly believe that a lot of what I learned at that time is applied to what I do now. I did some association management for Home Builders Association, and then was ready to go out on my own. And a gentleman had just purchased the Milwaukee Waves soccer team here, and was looking for a VP of marketing and also someone to launch their foundation. And so I went and I did that for a couple of years. Loved love the sports side of things, but didn't love the sports side of things when it came to the mom I wanted to be. The nights and then weekends, and the lack of flexibility in the sports world. And so that's really when I decided to start Capture. And full transparency, when I started Capture, it was to be able to work with corporations on what their philanthropic impact was going to be and how they were going to manage it. And there's, two things that really were the impetus for me to go into the sports realm. One had to do with Aaron Rodgers, which is why I keep his jersey behind. I had the opportunity to bring him in when I was just finishing up at the Wave. It was his first appearance after winning the Super Bowl. And brought him in. I had developed a charity jersey program.
Sorry. I was at that Super Bowl. Again, Ronnie, when was the last time your team went to a Super Bowl?
As I mentioned before we started, Chellee, I got my personal stand-up comedian with Aaron.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So Aaron came in and he got to meet with a little boy named Jack Bartos, who was so radioactive the night before. He was in New York in a hospital. He had to sleep with a piece of metal between him and his mom. And he got to fly out and he got to meet Aaron, which was one of his dreams. And I got to see Aaron interact and sitting on the floor of a locker room playing Legos with Jack, right? And just the bond that the two of them shared. And it lasted more than just that day, right? Aaron had Jack on the Wheaties box with him, the cereal box. Aaron kept in touch when Jack passed away. Aaron was part of Jack's twin sister's nonprofit. And so like that impact, and I think now still to this day, if you were to see Aaron and you would say Jack Bartos, instantly he would still look at you and be like, how do you know Jack? And so that was one of the things that was like, listen, if we can make opportunities for athletes to be able to be impacted, that they walk away thinking, I want to do this more, then it's a win-win for everybody, right? They're utilizing their platform. Charities are benefiting from it, awareness, whether it's awareness or dollars, and we're impacting lives. And so that was one of the things. And the second thing was JJ Watt, which is why I also have his jersey hanging behind. But he was my first athlete client, official client at Capture. I was very fortunate to be able to meet his mom and him twice in a week and start that relationship off, probably 4 months into working and owning Capture. So that's kind of where and how I got to where we are today. And it's very, very rewarding to be able to be a part of the impact.
It's really cool because I work with a number of athletes. I treat them and take care of them. And people are always like, what are they like? Wait, and I'm like, they're just regular people. That's it.
Yep.
They really are laid back, very cool. And it's cool because you do need to get that message out and let them know that, yeah, they do give back. They help out the community and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, without a doubt. I very often have told athletes that we work with, listen, like you eat, sleep, and poop like the rest of us.
Yeah.
And that's how you're going to be treated here. And so I think for us recognizing that they are human, right? And they want to be treated that way. And so, for us to be able to have that ability to really focus with them and glean from them what they're passionate about and help them figure out their why. And then go and be able to either, whether it's raise funds or, the give back part of it, like that's the best part of it.
I mean, I'm sure, these type of events where you just described with, especially Aaron Rodgers, right? In terms of, was that one of the moments where you just started realizing from a business perspective that, athletes are just more than just performers on the field. They are a platform, right? And how did that, it's just, I think sometimes people, again, they just see them on the playing field, but there's a life outside of that, right?
There absolutely is. And I think innately, like they want to do good. They just don't know how. And so, whether it is lending their name to a nonprofit, whether it is, starting a fiscal sponsorship or having a DAF or being able to start a 501c3, like walking them through, like, here's some different options. Here's what you can do. Finding out what time they have to give to this, right? Some of the guys are like, we want to do something every week or we want to do something every month. And I had a coach tell me, you're going to have me 3 days out of the year. How do we best maximize that? So finding out where they are in their life, and finding out, what are different things that impacted them growing up or that, that has happened to them. And to be able then to translate that into their impact piece of it. So Aaron Jones, and talking to Mr. and Mrs. Jones, we learned that they would always give shoes to kids on Aaron and his twin brother Alvin's teams all growing up. And very discreetly, they would give kids shoes to those that they saw that needed it. And fast forward, we were helping them create the foundation and what it looked like. And one of the campaigns that we developed for them was called Yards for Shoes. So for every yard that Aaron rushed, a pair of shoes would be given to a child in need. And so for us, we did the launch with the press to raise awareness about this, and then, we did a thermometer that kiddos could color in each week, how many yards he had. So they were following it, but then that gave us social media content for throughout the season. And we found a sponsor to help underwrite it. And, and then at the end of the season, between his yards and between what people donated, we were able to give away 2,000 pairs of shoes. And we found out from the principals or the social workers or the teachers which kids needed it most. And it wasn't like they were coming and just randomly picking up a shoe. It was like, no, we specifically got this shoe for you, Tommy. And Aaron was up there and going, Tommy, here's your shoe. So it made them feel so very special in a way. So I think, we always say finding your why, finding your, what's it, something unique with it. And then being able to look at, okay, how are you going to fundraise? Are you going to self-fund? Do you want to do a fundraising events? We have, galas and bowling events and softball games and kickball games. And we have a skeet shoot this year. And so, we have a fishing tournament. What's their passion outside of football or outside of basketball that we can then incorporate? And we'll do, a big event or a small event. Our largest event was JJ's softball game. It had 30,000 people, and raised, over 1.5 million, 1.6 million. And it was the Houston offense versus the Houston Texans defense, and 30,000 plus people came out because of, who JJ was and the experience that they had previously. And then the fun part is, that give back, that impact, what are we going to do? Are we going to go give away shoes? Are we going to, go on the literacy side of things, go give books to kids or do a huge book read, or what does that look like? And then we put together their year-round strategic plan for them.
Very cool.
So it's really, again, you see the difference in terms of from what used to be traditional endorsement deals versus really impact-driven branding. And maybe on that note, can you kind of elaborate a little bit more what a brand really actually means for athletes and entertainers? I just feel like, it used to be, hey, I'm signing a deal with, Nike for a shoe, etc. But now it's a lot more specific to a particular individual athlete in terms of what they stand for, what they do. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, and honestly, right now it's even become, particularly, NIL and social media, the athlete is their own brand.
Yeah.
It used to be that, brands would sponsor them and do that. Now athletes understand and realize they are their own brand. And how do they market themselves? And what do they put out? And who do they partner with? Like you said, from the endorsement side of things, what brands match their values, and match their brand to be able to, then build it out more. So I think it's become a lot more, like you said, before it used to be just traditional endorsements, right? Now it's the athletes building their own individual brand, but then it's also partnering. And how do we make those brand deals unique? So sometimes we'll work on with the athlete, and other times we'll have a corporation come to us and say, okay, we have X amount of dollars. We're looking to do a campaign with an athlete. What can we do? And a lot of times the first thing we'll do is we'll go to, okay, what types of things does that corporation support? How does that match up with a potential athlete? And then build out that campaign around it. And we even go as far as working with tons of the marketing agents to say, like, okay, does every one of their personal brand endorsements have a philanthropic impact component to it? If not, let's add it, because it's going to further strengthen their partnership with that brand. It's going to help with renewals when it comes time to it. It's going to help from the community standpoint. So there's so many reasons to be able to tie in that extra element.
So how are they finding you? Are the athletes coming to you directly and saying, hey, I want to do this and, give back? Or are the companies coming to you more with someone?
So right now I would say it's more of the athletes that we're working with. And so the athletes, it could be the athlete themselves. It could be their financial advisor. It could be, their trainer that has worked with them, and, another one of their clients has worked with us. It's a lot of word of mouth and referrals. It's financial, it's financial advisors, it's attorneys, it's marketing agents that say, like, okay, they want to do something, on the philanthropic side, here you go. We are having more brands come to us as they're seeing some of these larger season-long campaigns that we're doing, that are coming in and saying, okay, we feel really, really strongly about food insecurity. Do you have an athlete that is truly, authentically passionate about food, food insecurity that we could do something with? Here are some of the ideas that we have. What ideas do you have that we can build around it?
So have you come across an athlete who does have a brand and then unfortunately does something stupid in the public and screws it up? Are you just dropping them? Are you recreating the brand another way and fixing it?
So I think for us, we're always part of a team. It is, whether it's, the marketing agent, we see the athlete, in the middle of a spoke, and there's all these different spokes, around it that have to be on there, and they need a small, but they need a really strategic team around them. So like I said, whether it's agent, marketing agent, financial person, us on the brand and philanthropic side, what does their sports performance look like? What does their mental health look like? And building that out. And so when something like that does happen, it's typically the team that is getting together to say, okay, how do we handle this? They may have a publicist, they may, and be able to do it, but it's that team that's getting together to say, like, okay, here's what happened. How do we own it? What do we need to do to be able to make a course correction? That's authentic, right? We're not going to do something just to try to pacify the public. If it's not authentic, that's going to cause greater harm than it is good. So I think, just really talking with that athlete and that team as to what collectively we all think is best. And ultimately, it's the athlete's choice, right? It's them, it's their brand, it's their name, to be able to then go and do, and make follow-ups for that.
Okay.
Just staying on the example that since we talked about a couple of these plays, J.J. Watt, right? In terms of like more under the segment of like kind of turning moments into movement, so to speak, with the, like the recent Hurricane Harvey fund, right? I think, could you elaborate a little bit on that in terms of like, again, how individuals like that, awesome on the field, but then also again, when things like that happen, they just,
Yeah.
Basically.
I remember taking the call, and JJ saying um, he wanted to raise 200,000 and donate 100,000 of his own, for this Hurricane Harvey effort. And it ended up raising over $40 million. And it
What period
was,
of time was that? That was a short period of time.
it was a very short period of time, a couple weeks, if that. And it was, they couldn't go back to Houston because of the flooding. He was in Dallas, and was with their VP of communications and public relations there. And so it was them doing a lot of the, posting on a daily basis, giving updates where they are. What does it look like? Doing some media interviews, all from Dallas because they couldn't get into it. And so we were on the back end side of it, of figuring out, okay, the money's coming in. Where is it going? How are we accounting for it? What exactly from, the IRS rules and regulations do we need to do? What does that look like? And then in the meantime, there was also a gentleman in Wisconsin who said they would donate a semi if we wanted to do a supply drive at Pewaukee High School where he went to school, and then they would take it down to Houston for us. And so his mom and dad and I talked, and we're like, yeah, we could do that. And so, went and bought a couple different size boxes and looked at the boxes and what were we going to put in the boxes, and created, exactly what the kit was going to be based upon the needs that were down there. And got the news out, did some media around here as to what it looked like. We ended up sending 10 semis and a cargo plane.
So it had a ripple effect, right? In terms of what he started there.
It was a ripple effect. My aunt, to this day, I mean, like literally friends, family, everybody was at Pewaukee High School packing these boxes. I had called my brother and I was like, I need a forklift. Like, do you know anybody who has a forklift? And he brought, he worked with somebody he knew and brought us over a forklift because people were donating, pallets of water. And I was like, all of us are not going to unpack this water and pack it back up, So what does it look like? But my aunt still says to this day, she's like, I can't look at a can of tuna since then, because I packed so many cans of tuna in these boxes for them. But then, working and figuring out with FEMA, once they left Wisconsin and they got down to Houston, where's a warehouse that they could actually go to? How are we going to distribute it? The Texans were absolutely amazing, and the city of Houston, to figure out where could we even get to for these players to be able to distribute it, and what did that look like? So very, very rewarding. I have the ultimate respect for JJ in that, with this money came so much responsibility on him, and it was his name and it was his brand, and he assured people that he would do right by the money that they donated, and he absolutely did. I mean, he personally interviewed these nonprofits, to make sure that they had the infrastructure in place, then that they could do this, and the reporting, and just did everything really, really first class.
What was the time frame from once you got the money to being able to get the supplies and distribute everything?
So once, for the distribution side of things, once the semis left Wisconsin, they got down to Houston. We unloaded it in a warehouse so the semis could go, and then we got additional semis down in Houston within days to be able to go out to these sites, when the flooding had receded a little bit, but going out to the sites that needed it the most. And the Texans organized, their players to be there, to be distributing all of the boxes and the water and everything, and putting it into all of the cars that were coming through for the distribution. And then on the money side of things, he took a look at, and really vetted the nonprofits, and then immediately started getting those funds out to them, and doing, he did quarterly updates and reports and impact reports that were just phenomenal throughout the whole process of it.
So do you find a lot of athletes do one or two big things and then they're kind of done, or are they like continuously doing it? And then what happens once they retire? Are they, most of them, still involved also?
You know, I think it depends on where they are in their life, right? You know, what are the responsibilities do they have? What are they planning when they're retiring? What's the off season look like? I would say a lot of them continue it when they're not playing. I think it serves and gives the athletes a purpose when they're done playing. That is something more that they can do and continue, and continue on once they've stopped playing. And I think it depends on how much they raise while they were playing, and how much they want to continue it. So I think it truly is different for each of the athletes that we work with as to what they want to give and what they want and how they want to do it moving forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I would like to step away from our segment here, the unfiltered wacky stats. And then maybe when we come back, I would like to talk a little bit more about the business side of things as well. And obviously, building that, brand ecosystem. But for now, let's step away for a quick minute for our wacky stats here on ESEA Unfiltered. Thanks.
All right. We're here with the wacky stats. I got Tennessee here. So I'm going to start it off. There he goes, coming. Hey, did you know athletes who post with their dog get 2 times more engagement than athlete holding a trophy?
I believe that. I believe it. But athletes are 4 times more likely to post a gym selfie than a highlight clip, even if they lost the game.
Okay, I know you do that, but you're not an athlete. Come on.
No, yeah, no, it has nothing to do with athletes. It's just, I can't help myself. So.
I know. All right. Well, athletes are 5 times more likely to smile in sponsorship photos than in game photos.
I could definitely see that. Definitely see that. So here's the last one. So 81% of athletes think sunglasses instantly make them look more brandable. What do you think about that?
I agree.
Does it?
Oh, yeah. I put on my aviators. I'm Tom Cruise, baby.
Please don't. Please don't. All right. Well, good. Let's get back to the episode in Chellee. Well, we're back from our wacky stats. So now, Chellee, a little bit more on the business side of things. Obviously, I work with, with athletes, entertainers from a wealth management perspective. And I always tell people in terms of, we talk a lot about philanthropy, et cetera. Don't do it just because of tax deductions or the financial aspect of things. Do it because you have a passion for it, right? Because I think authenticity is something that's important when you do that. But in regards to the business side of things, there is a business aspect, right? In terms of again, from a tax perspective, obviously I think it has to do with, what attracts, certain sponsors, engagement and fan loyalty potentially. So what have you seen in terms of what are some of the benefits for an athlete that signs up with you and say, hey, look, from a financial perspective, here are some of the benefits. Obviously, again, do something that you're passionate about, but here are some of the benefits, and then just kind of tell us a little bit more about building that brand ecosystem for that particular client.
Yeah. I mean, I think, looking at, we have, that spoke that we talked about earlier, the financial manager, the accountant that's in there, from a brand side and from a give back side, there's certainly those elements to it. We leave the financial side to the experts, and the accounting side as to, how it can help them, in those ways. But I think oftentimes athletes will be like, hey, we're hosting this camp or we're doing this, but they don't have the structure set up so that it could be a tax deduction for them. And so just asking those questions and getting the rest of their team involved, so that we are maximizing that and elevating their brand.
So collaborating with the subject matter experts, right? Be that
Without a doubt.
guy, be that the tax person, et cetera.
Yep.
I think because
Yep.
you're doing it anyway, it has a benefit for, again, for people, et cetera. But
Yes.
you might as well take advantage of from a tax perspective, et cetera, as well. So
Yes. We firmly, firmly believe in doing really good at what you're good at, and having expert partners around you to be able to refer that. So we've built out, that network of individuals that I would trust, and to be able to provide some referrals that way. And then, they can certainly look and see. But for us, that finance side, that accounting side, like that should be experts, because I think particularly in the nonprofit world, there's specific nonprofit rules and regulations for accounting practices and for rule compliance and all of that. And so that, I think, is somewhere that athletes sometimes don't truly understand the impact that they want to do good. They're setting it up with friends and or family members, but they're not doing the compliance side of things. They're not following the nonprofit rules and regulations. So we're a firm believer that, whoever our client is working with has to have that nonprofit expertise. They have to have a nonprofit attorney, and they have to have a nonprofit accountant, because we hate to see them want to do good and it end up being a PR nightmare for them. And so that's why we talk a lot about, whether it's fiscal sponsorship versus 501c3, or how do you set it up and what management do you need for that? So that, 2 years down the road, they're not in an article saying how mismanaged their nonprofit was.
So when you create the brand and stuff, are you like creating a logo for them and you're doing the whole thing that they just can throw out there and market from A to Z, basically?
Yeah. So we'll walk them through and, and ask a lot of questions from, mood board. What are ads that you have seen that you love that are out there? What are logos that you've seen? Like, just literally screenshot and shoot us over, to see, so that we can get a feel of what colors do you like? What fonts do you like? Like all down to those basics. And then, as we learn more about them, like, are you a sarcastic person? Are you a serious person? Are you like to crack jokes? Do you, are you, very emotional? Are you not? And so when we're building out their brand deck, we have, okay, what's your mission statement as a human being? We have, what's your tone of voice going to be, so that when you're posting on social media, we're following that tone of voice. Then we look at, your color palette. Here's going to be your color palettes that we're going to use. Here's going to be your fonts, your primary and your secondary fonts, so that we can build out a true brand, so that we have that consistency. Here's a filter that we're going to apply to your photos that are on social media, so that they look consistent. And then we'll ultimately build their logo, if that's what we think that, that they should do based upon where they are in their career. And then from that, take it and build out their social media calendar. A lot of the times we're actually doing the posting for them through a program of ours.
That for them.
We'll run it for them. So we put it, we develop the social media calendar. We put in the graphics. We put in what we think the caption should be. A link gets sent to the athlete. They can approve it or decline it. And then it posts for them once they approve it, to be able to do that. And then on the back end, we can look at the analytics. We can say, like, okay, is a video doing better than a still graphic? Is 10 a.m. better than 2 p.m. or 8 p.m.? Looking at some of those to be able to help them grow their social media, not only their followers, but also their engagement. So, a lot of the brands, if they're looking for deals, they're going to say, yes, they're going to look at how many followers do you have on social media, but they're also going to look at how many, what's that engagement looking like? How many of your followers are actually engaging? Because if you have 100,000 followers, but your engagement rate, is super low, versus you have a lower amount and your engagement is higher, they're going to reach more people with that higher engagement route. So we'll do that. We'll build out their websites if they need websites built out. We work with them on their public relations. So whether it is scheduling media interviews for them, whether it's scheduling podcasts, being able to, particularly on the philanthropic side, being able to, work with the NBA and the NFL and the MLB to make sure that they're aware from a team perspective and a league perspective of what their athlete is doing so that they can help push out to the good that the athlete is doing.
Are there certain leagues where you feel like, hey, there's ways to go in terms of?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
But, I was just wondering, I mean, I'm looking at the landscape myself, but, I see this from like, again, the retirement, planning perspective.
Yeah.
And certain areas, certain leagues are way behind.
Way behind.
There's a lot of money being made and stuff. So,
yeah. And I think, from the individual athlete side of things, it's working with them because, they have their brand, they're part of the team's brand, they're part of the league's brand, so it's kind of a step up. And so it is interesting, even within a league, how some teams really support their athletes and other teams not as much. Yeah. But definitely from the league view, it's very apparent which leagues are much more prominent with their athletes being forward facing, with their athletes, building their brands quicker.
Yesterday or the other day, we're speaking to a agent, and she only works with female agents or female athletes. Sorry.
Yeah.
So primarily a lot of Olympians and stuff like that, and she tries to help them to do stuff like this, to tell the story, to get everything out there. Because obviously Olympians are not making as much as a NFL, MLB, whatever.
Correct.
Do you do a lot of storytelling with the athletes, or is it more the giving back? And then do you do stuff with Olympians and smaller sports also?
Yeah. So we had, a lot of what we do is storytelling. For it. We worked with a speed skater, Olympian, probably 12 years ago. And for her, we did, their trials, their Olympic trials are in, December-ish, right before the Olympics. And we started working with her in probably July, August, maybe a little bit earlier. But learning her story, we found out that she was bullied at a pretty significant level. One of her coaches was actually fired for the treatment of the athletes. And so we knew that October was anti-bullying month. And so we developed a whole anti-bullying campaign for her in the month of February, from a PR blitz and getting her on media, to having her go to multiple schools and talk in school assemblies, to being able to put on social, just different things as to resources of, if you are being bullied, here's where you can call or what you can do. And from that, she got her largest sponsor ever. And it was a company on the East Coast, so not even around, the Midwest where we're from. On the East Coast, was looking to sponsor an Olympian, was looking for someone who had a story to tell, and came across her anti-bullying campaign, and she received her largest sponsorship ever. And from that campaign, we were able to pitch her to AT&T for her to be included in AT&T's Olympic commercial for it. So I think, yes, we have worked with Olympians to be able to do it. Their cyclical, their cycle as to when they typically get sponsors is obviously different than other athletes, but there definitely are opportunities in there. And I think it's brands, corporate brands are now looking for a lot more of that story, of that authenticity, of that connection, versus I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars to hold up my product in a social media campaign right now. So, yeah.
So, with the draft happening, basically right top of mind here, shouldn't you already be getting calls that maybe you do from, again, from agents, from wealth advisors that say, hey, I have a client. We don't know what round yet, but we need, I just compare this a lot. I always tell athletes, it's like you might not realize you're a business owner. You are the business, right?
Correct.
You look at a business that's a startup that then goes into the phase where they're growing till they leave, so they retire.
Yep.
You know, I think you have to start early on with that branding. Would you
Yep.
agree?
I mean, we're working with some high schoolers,
Okay.
that are, you know, on a smaller strategic level, right? To be able to help them find their team, you know, in that cog, helping them start to develop their brand, what it looks like. But I think when you're talking about the draft, a couple of years ago, we worked with an athlete that was going into the draft and really started working with them right after they declared for the draft
Okay.
to be able to shape their story, so that our intent was, okay, leading up to the draft, or when they're at the combine and they're going through questions with teams, and teams are doing their due diligence and teams are doing their research and the media is doing their research, they can look at this athlete's website. And now that there's some of the messaging about who they are off the field, what they do. And when we go back and we look at the draft coverage of that year, a lot of what was being reported draft night and leading up to it about who this person was as a human off the field was the information that had been developed prior to the draft and was sitting on their website.
See, I think that's so cool because when I meet with a high school athlete, I'm like, all right, what are your goals? Do you want to play in college? Do you want to go pro? And obviously they'll say, I want to go pro. And I'm like, all right,
Correct.
so what makes you different? Well, I care a lot. Okay, so do the other 10,000 kids.
Yep.
What else? Well, I have a good heart and I put in a lot of work. All right, whatever. So does
Yep.
everyone else. So, you know, it's always trying to get them to see, and doing something like that. That's
Yep.
thinking outside the box. That's
Yep.
giving you an advantage. Because I would think at the end of the day, if you got two guys who are pretty equal and one is known as a standout guy, they're going to pick that kid over someone else.
Yes. Well, I mean, and even things like, you know, your media interviews, how you're talking to the media. You know, we work with a woman who's in the sports media, and you know, she helps coach some of the athletes that we work with to be able to say, like, okay, this is what you could prove on when you're doing media interviews. This is, you know, you had a bad game, you know, here's how you can handle it with the media to be able to do it. You know, the media is fishing for something and they want to try to do it. Here's how you can politely repeat some of your target statements to be able to do it. So looking at it from a media interview standpoint, and I think also looking at, like, we've had scouts or former scouts for teams in different leagues talk to the athletes and say, like, listen, when we're coming in, we're watching you. We're not only watching you play the sport, we're watching how you're interacting with your teammates. We're watching how you interact with your coaches. How do you interact with the fans? We're talking to, you know, your trainer. Are you doing anything additional? Like, what does that look like? So I think for us, taking a look at the macro level of an athlete, like, here's everything that goes into it, and how can we make you the most prepared to be able to do that. And again, it's not all us. It's just us gathering a team around of people that have that expertise that can help you and train you in those ways. You know, and a lot of emphasis was like making sure your body's right? 100%, you need that. But what about making sure your mind's right? Like, what about making sure you're, you know, in a good mental spot and, you know, emotional intelligence? And so I think from, you know, A to Z, I guess, is looking at all of the different things that, you know, athletes are being hit with, because they are. And especially, I think of these high schoolers and these college, like, they're still kids and they're having, you know, a lot thrown at them. And how do you deal with it? And from the parent's perspective, how do you parent somebody who is getting 21 offers?
Yeah.
You know, to be able to do that. So I think there's just so much that goes into it. And so for us to be a resource hub, to be able to have that referral base has been really, really helpful for us.
The mental side is so big. A lot of people don't understand it.
Yeah.
I traveled the world with the Olympic swimmers, and this one swimmer, multi-gold medalist swimmer, and then at the last Olympics we were in Japan, and he did the open water swim. Well, that's a forever. So
Yeah.
I was his physiotherapist, I was his coach, I was feeding him during the Olympics. I'm talking, getting him pumped up and mentally prepared for it. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, you got to be able to pull all that together and give them what they need to keep them up there, because
Yes.
it's draining on them also.
Yes. I mean, the sport itself is draining on it, right? And then you think of the outside factors of like, if you have a lot of money and now all of a sudden, everybody and their brothers and their sisters and their family members and everybody wants some of that money, and how do you deal with it? And what pressures are being put on it? And, people want autographs and they want pictures and they want media interviews, and everybody wants something of you. And how do you deal with that? It's a lot.
What do you think in terms of the different channels that are available, be that media, be that, like events, social media, podcasts? How do you rank that in terms of from a branding perspective? Does it depend on the individual athlete or just that kind of personality? Or is there a certain like, no, you got to do this first, that second?
It's really unique to the person. And I say that because, we have athletes that hate public speaking, hate talking to the media. The thought of standing up in front of a room at a gala and giving a speech gives them hives. And we have others that, thrive in that environment. So figuring out, who they are, what they do, like maybe a bowling event that you don't have to do a big speech is probably better. And you all,
Do you tell them to picture the audience naked when they're getting?
we have that. They have all heard that, yes. But I mean, truly, like some of them are like, that it's just not them, right? So I'm not going to force you to like, I want you to go there and I want you to have fun. And I want you to, whether it's your give back, whether it's the event, whether it's a brand endorsement, like I want you to have fun so that you want to come back and you do want to do it more, so that you impact more lives, right? Like I don't want it to be like, oh, I have to go do this. I want it to be like, I get to go do this today.
They want to tackle the audience. They don't want to talk to them. So
Right. Correct.
I don't know if you know who Devin Funchess is. He's an ex-NFL player, and I took care of him a bunch. But he had a charity event where we would go to Compton in LA, and he would do a whole thing with the middle school and high school kids. And I actually brought my daughter, and she volunteered and helped out. And it made an impact on her, even that she still talks about it. And, she wants to do sports management now, but she's always looking to get involved with stuff. And it goes a long way. And a lot of times the athlete doesn't even know it.
Yeah. No, without a doubt. I often tell them, I'm like, listen, you're going to go there and you're going to impact so many different people. You're going to impact the volunteers. You're going to impact the kids. You're going to impact the sponsors. You're going to impact. But like, my hope is that you're impacted as well. That you walk away from this with one thing, whether it's the Aaron Rodgers of like, I'm going to keep in touch with Jack's family, or it's, I have so many stories of athletes that have like, just walked away and was like, holy cow, like it's because of me, it's a different side. And like, I got to go have fun and play, kickball with the kiddos, and just be a kid again and just have fun with them. And I got to talk to a little kid that, was bullied and share that I was bullied too. And this is what I did. And look where I am now. And you can get through this and you're going to be okay. And so, those are why moments.
That's cool.
What are the
Yeah.
what are the absolute pitfalls where you're like maybe a couple of things you see consistently happening? I'm like, no, you just can't do that. Again, from a branding, maybe stuff. What is it?
I think, doing something that's not authentically you, people are going to see through it. It's not going to end well for you. I think also being able to like recognize that you need to have experts around you for these different things. I've seen so many times, that they'll have, Uncle Bob do this, or, neighbor so and so do this. And they're not an expert in it. And it they can become an expert, they can learn and they can become an expert. But I think to automatically say like, oh, they're my friend, they're gonna do all my marketing deals for me, or oh, they're my friend, they're gonna run my foundation. Um, I see a lot of athletes get into trouble that way.
Yeah.
So authenticity, you're saying, do
Yep.
something that again that fits your personality. Again, that you stand behind. Okay.
Yep.
And
Yep.
in terms of like, again, talking back to craft or any professional athlete right now, what are the top 3 things if they haven't done it yet from a branding perspective? Chellee says you got to start with those 3 things.
Social media. You need to be active on social media.
And again, also with social media, you're saying with a strategy in mind, with the team is
Correct.
not like, hey, I'm out at the bar and I'm like, yeah, look at me.
No, don't do that.
Okay.
Please don't do that. Yes, no, have a strategy for your social media. Just because a lot of the brands are looking for that. I think finding your why, and giving back is an essential part of an individual's brand. And not to say that it's not going to change, right? There could be a life event, something happened to your mom or something happened to your wife or your kid that's going to change your why. And it's okay to change down the road, but to have a reason to say like yes or no when everybody's coming at you for something, to say like, no, I'm sorry. That is a fantastic cause and a fantastic foundation, but it just doesn't align with what we're giving, our mission and vision and our pillars for this year. Please circle back in a year or two and see if, something has changed. But I always say you need those pillars to say yes, and you need those pillars to say no. But so I think from a social media side of things, the philanthropic side of things, and then the third thing is finding your team. Finding your small but mighty team, that you have the expertise, in all of those, because if you don't have that support, you can't do everything on your own. And if you don't have that support of good individuals that are good at what they do and they're good humans, your brand can crash and burn pretty quick.
Yeah.
But
Good
we normally
advice.
kind of top it off, right, with the walk of 10 that Eric is waiting for, right?
All right. So I'm going to ask you 10 true, false, or one word answers.
The pressure.
So, actually, wait a sec. Where did that go? All right. True or false? Personal branding matters more than performance early in an athlete's career.
You know what? You have to keep the main thing the main thing. So I think you have to be able to perform, before you can build that brand. So that wasn't really
Social media following is more valuable than championships for sponsorships.
true.
Okay. One word. Most important platform for athletes right now.
From a social standpoint.
However you want to take it.
Oh, all right. Most important platform. I think finding their why. I think finding their why, like they have to know who they are and be authentic about it.
All right. True or false? Controversy can sometimes help an athlete's brand.
I don't want controversy at any point. So no, I'm going to go with no. But I actually, I shouldn't say that, because sometimes there is controversy, and if you handle it right, and you have those tools to be able to handle it right, it can improve your brand. So I'm on that one. How about that?
All right. One word: biggest branding mistake athletes make.
One word: inauthenticity.
Okay. Hardest sport to market.
Ooh. I don't think it's defined by sport anymore. I think, we have some individuals that are not playing at the biggest college and have way more social media and endorsement deals than other, huge main D1 athletes. So I think it's not necessarily sport, it's the person.
All right. True or false? Athletes should manage their own social media accounts.
It depends on who they are. Man, I am really bad at true and false answers, aren't I? Some people do a fantastic job. I know some that manage their own, and kudos to them. They do a really, really good job. They're consistent. They do it quite, they aren't doing it once a week. They're consistent, they're authentic, and they can do it. The majority, I would say no.
Okay. All right, last one. First thing you look for in a marketable athlete.
They're a good human.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us. It was a lot of fun.
Well, good. I'm glad. Thank you. I had fun too. Hopefully it's helpful to somebody.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure the audience will find it helpful. Again, the branding is such a big part. So appreciate all the information. Thank you very much, Chellee.
Yep. Awesome. Have a great day.